Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome into another Big Apple Blitz here on a Monday morning. What's going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, how's it going, my friend?
It's going. I sat through a really shitty Giants game yesterday, as I have had to do for the last several weeks. But listen, this was kind of like last year's Patriots game for the Giants. It came down to a field goal. If the Giants end up winning that game, they would have fallen down to 7th in the draft order. Very similar story to what we saw last year. But instead of winning it, field goal gets blocked. The New York Giants lose, and we move up in the draft order to number 2 overall. It's exactly what we all wish happened last year in that Patriots game. Giants could have leapfrogged New England, taken Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whoever they preferred. But alas, we're a year too late for that. At least we're getting our way this time around.
There you go. Not much better on the Jets side of things. Stop me if you heard this before. Another fourth quarter meltdown, 5 games this year, the most in franchise history that they've had a lead in the fourth quarter and lost. The only saving grace to my day yesterday, I know you're going to enjoy this one. Chicken cutlets. I got a fridge full of leftover cutlets waiting for me after we get off the air here for the leftovers. I'm a big fan of the leftovers too.
Big fan of leftovers, especially leftover cutlets. Love some good cutlets. I had some good pizza last night, so Italian food all the way around.
There we go. Things you love to see. All right, so with both these teams in an absolutely dreadful spot, Jets actually officially eliminated from the playoffs after their loss. We knew that was coming for weeks now. We figured why not bring in a little mock draft Monday. So how do you feel about doing a little mock draft on the show today, Anthony?
I'm excited. It's really difficult to talk about the current New York Giants, so I much prefer to look ahead to the future and talk about what the New York Giants could look like in 2025. It's a lot more fun than just talking about how embarrassing they are every single week.
It is a lot more fun than that. Clearly, there is some question marks that have to be answered before we even get to the draft. We don't know who the GM and head coach of the Jets is going to be. It seems like it's up in the air on the Giants as well. But still going to be a fun exercise. We'll go through, we'll talk through each one of these selections here. So let's get it rocking. Travis Hunter is the only player off the board. So you have your pick of the litter.
Yeah, so surprising that the PFF mock draft simulator didn't have Las Vegas going quarterback. I would assume that in this scenario, they would go Shedeur Sanders. They seem in love with him. He seems in love with them. But even still, if Shedeur is on the board and Cam Ward is on the board, I'm going Cam Ward. I do like him just a little bit more as a prospect right now. I liked Cam Ward a lot going into the 2024 NFL draft. Thought he could be a mid-round sleeper. I think that extra year of developing at Miami has done wonders for him and turned him into a legitimate instant impact potential starter. So I like Cam Ward a lot. I like him just a little bit more than Shedeur. That could change. There's a lot of time between now and the draft, and I have a lot of studying to do on both of these guys, but early leader in the race is Cam Ward. So that's who I would take. The only other thing that I would consider here would be a potential trade down. And I think that's going to be very dependent on who the New York Giants next general manager is, if there is a next general manager. If it's Joe Schoen, I think the Giants are 100% drafting a quarterback no matter what, because that's really all he can do to save his job at this point. However, if they decide to fire Joe Schoen and move on, I think there is absolutely an argument for a new general manager to make, where trading down, rebuilding the roster in its entirety, and then plugging in a quarterback in the following year's draft might be the better option. Just because looking at this roster, this team has a lack of talent everywhere. Could a quarterback even step in and find any success? We heard that argument last year with, people were saying, well, Drake May, if he steps into the Giants roster right now, he won't be able to succeed because the team is so bad. Well, somehow this roster is even worse this year than it was last year. So I think you can make that argument in an even stronger fashion this time around. So if you are a new GM stepping in and you want to have your guys and your organization and your roster perhaps trading down would be the argument to make. But if I'm doing this in a predictive fashion, which I am, I think the Giants are going to go ahead and take a quarterback in round 1, and I like Cam Ward the best.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think you can make a case for the Giants to move down, but at the end of the day, and I'm not saying that I agree with this, but it's something we've talked through on the air a lot here. I think they end up keeping Joe Shane, and I think there's a chance they move on from Brian Dable and have Dable be the scapegoat. And if that's the case, I think Joe Shane's absolutely going to draft a quarterback. Cam Ward to the New York Giants, number 2 overall. The one thing I don't like about this PFF mock sim, as someone who's done a few of them already, be with my team on the ropes, I'm glad that we're doing this with you on, because there's been multiple times where neither the Raiders or Giants take a quarterback at the top, and then it messes me up at 7.
Right. Yeah, I think, PFF's mock draft simulator is the best to me, but it's so funky and you have to play with all of the settings to get it to work in a realistic fashion. But yeah, it's a good thing that we're doing this together. And I think one last note that I'll make is you mentioned that you think Joe Shane is going to stay. I think so too. I just can't for the life of me understand why. And I'm really hoping, I don't know if you saw yesterday, this is something from yesterday's game that we can react to. The plane that flew around MetLife Stadium, basically saying, John Mara, please fix this mess. This is a dumpster fire. There's somebody really hired a plane with a banner to fly around for about 30 minutes over MetLife Stadium with that message. First of all, legend. I love you. Keep it up. Do it again next week. We need you to keep sending this message to management and to ownership, rather. And I really think that that is something that's going to get through to John Mara. I think, like I always say, once the fans become very noisy, that's when John Mara decides to act. And I think that this is the ultimate, okay, the fan base is officially done. We need to change. And the last time this happened, I saw beat writers talking about it. They said that in 1978, I believe, a fan did something similar with a plane flying around and begging for change. And it worked. They brought in complete new restructuring of the organization. They reorganized the entire structure and hierarchy of the organization. I'm hoping that that's what we get again as a result of this guy, this hero flying this plane over the New York Giants on Sunday. Hopefully we get a change like that. And then all of the mock drafts that we do forthcoming will be completely different. But right now, assuming Joe Shane is still here, it's going to be quarterback. But man, I can't stress it enough. I really hope that there's a new general manager, and I hope that it's not just Brandon Brown promoted from assistant to GM. I think that's ridiculous. I don't understand Giants fans' infatuation with that guy. I just think we need to wipe the slate clean and give a GM the opportunity to do whatever he wants. Doesn't have to take a quarterback, but could take a quarterback. Doesn't have to trade down, but could. Just give me all of the options in the world. Right now, I feel like the Giants are painted into too tight of a corner.
The plane thing can absolutely work. I remember in 2014, Jet fans flew a plane saying "Fire John Idzik," and they did after the season. So it has shown the ability to work. I saw that. I absolutely loved it. I also saw something else that I wanted to get your take on with the alleged Giants player that hired an OnlyFans model to flash the Saints sideline. What do we think?
Okay, that was the most obviously fake shit that I've ever seen, and I love the reactions from fans because the name, like the profile picture, was TD, so everybody's like, Tommy DeVito, you dirty dog. That is hilarious to me, but it's so obviously fake because all of the messages were sent within a minute of each other, which is like very clearly somebody was texting themselves. So
Yep.
I don't know, whatever. Even if that was real, don't even care. Like, it's funny. So
It was funny.
it's such a non-story, but it's such a funny story at the same time.
All right, let's lock Cam Ward in here, and hopefully I don't get messed up here, but let's see who the next few picks are. I did. Damn it. I got sniped. I was trying to do a draft to get Mason Graham to the New York Jets. That's my preferred route, I think, at this point, because the Jets, I think, desperately need help on the interior of the defensive line. And not only that, but Abdul Carter goes off the board too at edge. I know, the Jets have spent a lot of draft capital on that edge position the last few years, but clearly Hassan Reddick is not going to come back. So they're going to need that help. And Jermaine Johnson's coming off an injury here. Justin saying to draft Shador. Do I do it because he's there, even though I don't believe he's actually going to be there?
Yeah, because I think there's two ways that you can look at this. First of all, the draft is a crapshoot. Things are crazy. Sometimes players fall and drop in the draft and you never expect it. And hey, perhaps Shedeur Sanders, the Deion Sanders control thing. Maybe it scares some teams away. And by the time we get to April, maybe he does fall a little bit and isn't a top 2 pick. Maybe he's a top 10 pick instead. Totally possible. Or you could just use this or put it under the lens of perhaps the Jets traded up here. And we're not going through the trade details, but maybe they do make a move, get aggressive, and take a quarterback higher up the board. It's just really going to come down to whether or not you feel, as the Jets GM in the scenario, that taking a quarterback in the first round is the right decision here, because there is a lot of talent at other positions available on the board right now. But then again, getting a franchise quarterback is the number one priority for every team. So, it's up to you to decide which strategy is more viable in this situation.
Now, I wanted to ask you, because PFF's number one ranked quarterback is Jalen Milroe. And I wanted to see your thoughts on him, because I feel like he's one of the more polarizing. A lot really like his athleticism and his rushing ability, but I think there's definitely some accuracy concerns when it comes to Jalen Milroe.
There are plenty of concerns with Jalen Milroe. I will say I know that it's Trevor Sikkema of PFF who does this draft board. He's great, and I listened to his podcast, the NFL Stock Exchange, with Connor Hughes, or is it Rogers? Connor Rogers. Yeah, and I get those Connors confused. They both cover the Jets in a capacity. So, but I really like him. I know that these rankings are not finalized by any means, and I know that they're probably not even his latest rankings, because anytime he does any of those big board updates, it's like 2 weeks later, and then they update the PFF mock draft machine. I don't think he still has Jalen Milroe as his number one quarterback. However, I will say, to your point about Jalen Milroe, very polarizing and for very good reason, but I do like him. I've talked a lot about this with Alex. Alex, my co-host on Fireside Giants, he really doesn't seem to like Jalen Milroe at all, wouldn't touch him anywhere in the first round. I could get behind it. I like him in the first round. I think there's a lot of tools and traits. I think you could make the argument that he's a generational rusher from the quarterback position, and there are a lot of different offenses that you can build around a player like that. But I just think for the New York Giants, it's very tough to project how a player like Jalen Milroe would do with them right now, because they don't have a structured coaching staff. We don't know if Brian Daboll is going to be here. And even if he is here, he has to make a complete overhaul to his staff anyway. That's not the situation that I think Jalen Milroe can thrive in. I think he needs to go to a team that has an established culture and identity on offense, and they can build around him. The New York Giants don't have that. So for that reason, even though I like Milroe and I think he's going to be a successful pro, I'm just not so sure that it would happen with the New York Giants. And I think I would make the same argument for the Jets, who also have a real bad structural problem and a lot of coaching changes underway.
All right, I'll go with Shedeur, even though I don't love it. I really wanted Mason Graham and or Abdul Carter. Those are my two guys, and of course, they both go off the board.
Let me make an argument here. If you go to all positions, I'll make an argument for the Jets. I think Will Johnson is arguably the best player, regardless of position in the draft. Like, maybe not, but he's top 3, arguably. He's very, very good. Jets are likely to lose DJ Reed, and Sauce Gardner's having a down year. Is there zero consideration given to the Michigan cornerback?
I thought about it, and maybe I could talk myself into that. Because as you said, DJ Reed's going to walk. Sauce Gardner is coming off a down year. I think it'll depend on how the Jets feel about Sauce going forward, whoever they hire. For me, I look at defensive line and safety as bigger needs than corner, but I think you can make the case that they could draft a corner. And I like Will Johnson. I have nothing against the prospect.
Yeah, my argument here would just be, I think the Jets, the roster's not bad enough to me. I know it obviously underperformed and didn't meet our expectations this year, but still isn't bad enough to me to warrant drafting for need 100% of the time. And that's why I think you could make an argument for taking the best player available. And if you feel like Will Johnson is the best player available, I think that stacking talent at that position could be really exciting. But then again, taking 2 top 5 cornerbacks and just a few years apart from one another, maybe not the best idea, which is what First State Jets obviously pointed to. However, I think Will Johnson would be an exciting pick for this team. I think you really can't go wrong. A lot of the guys at the top of the board make sense for the Jets. And that's why I'm kind of envious of the Jets. I think that you can make an argument for Will Johnson being the pick, for Shedeur Sanders being the pick. Like you mentioned, Mason Graham. I think you could even make an argument for Ted McMillan being a good pick. But for the Giants, you just can't say the same. The Giants just have to take a quarterback or trade down for a haul, which is what really sucks. But the Jets should be sitting pretty in the draft and should have an opportunity to land a talent that will make a nice impact.
There we go. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take Justin's advice and take Shador Sanders here, even though I don't think he'll be there when it's all said and done. And I think this eventually changes. But for the exercise, let's do it. All right. New York Giants back on the board. Some of the top names: running back from Ohio State, Tyler Warren, from a tight end. They just took a tight end from Penn State. No.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
there you go.
Theo
That's not
Johnson,
happening.
and I
Theo
like Theo
Johnson.
Johnson. I think
I do too.
Well, yeah, Theo Johnson, early part of the season wasn't too great for the Giants and had a lot of inconsistencies. Let's just put it plainly, but I think there's potential there, and his athleticism is enough to bank on. So I think that you probably just bring in a veteran to that tight end room, and you hope that Theo Johnson continues to develop. One thing that I got to point to: the Lions taking a running back at pick 32. Like, let's be so real. What is the mock draft machine doing right now?
This is what I'm
It's not
talking
going to
about.
happen.
The PFF mock draft machine needs a little tweak right now. There's no shot a running back is going to the Lions in the first round.
Yeah. I mean, they got the best backfield in football with that 1-2 punch. And I love Jahmyr Gibbs. So let me see what receivers are available on the board here, because that's something that I'm curious about. Now, again, I think that the PFF rankings are off right now, and I don't think these are anything close to what it's going to look like finalized. I think Trey Harris is going to move well up the board.
Me too.
And I think he's going to be an early second-round pick, and that's who I'm going to take here for the Giants. And that might be a little bit controversial. I know that the Giants obviously have a lot of holes to fill and a lot of needs to address on both sides of the ball. So maybe double dipping on offense isn't the best idea. Maybe going with a wide receiver in the second round after you just took Neighbors in the first isn't the best idea. I'm going to argue that you need to stack talent at positions for the New York Giants right now. And I think Trey Harris was a legitimate Biletnikoff Award candidate midway through the season. He was injured with a hip/groin injury, and it kept him sidelined. He only played in 8 games this year, but still put up 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. He was one of the best players in the SEC. He's 6'2". He could be the perfect outside wide receiver. Darius Slayton's about to walk in free agency. So even if you don't think wide receiver is a major need for the New York Giants right now, it will be by the time we get to March or April. Plus, the hit rate on second-round wide receivers, very high. Wide receivers in the second round, you love to bank on that. And I think Trey Harris is going to fly up the board. I see Justin calling for Xavier Restrepo. I really like him. I don't think that he's got the upside that Trey Harris has. Plus, Trey Harris, I don't know if you knew this, Matt. I just wrote an article about this morning. I thought this was really interesting. Quarterback in high school for Malik Neighbors. They're actually buddies. Go way back, and they have chemistry and an established relationship already. And I also just think Trey Harris is sick. Like, he is dirty. He's a really good player. Again, Biletnikoff Award candidate. So I'm going to go ahead and take him with the second round pick. Again, I know that it might be controversial to go wide receiver with pick 34, but I think that it makes a lot of sense. You get the quarterback and you pair him with 2 stud wide receivers and Neighbors and Trey Harris.
Pat sniped me again. I was hoping Tyler Warren would fall to the New York Jets at 39. I think he probably goes in the first round, but that's a prospect, a prospect that I really like. Jets obviously have a pretty big need at the position. For me, I'm taking a look now at either edge or interior defensive line. Some of the names that are jumping out to me here, James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee. I want to take a look at some of the other interior guys. My guy from Ohio State must have just went off the board as well. Did he go in the first round yet? Talik Williams is a name that I was watching for.
To Philly too. How frustrating.
Yep. Again, why is this mock draft sending all the not positions of needs to these good teams at the end of the draft?
I will say the best teams in the NFL, they don't draft for need. They do draft for best player available, and that's why they're so good. Not that those guys are going to go to those 2 teams, but just as a general rule of thumb, which is why I tried to make that argument for Will Johnson to the Jets anyway. But
I'm going to take the edge here and James Pierce Jr. I'm not loving how this mock is shaping out for me because my plans keep getting sniped right in front of my face. But as I mentioned before, I think edge is a sneaky position of need for this team. We have no idea what Jermaine Johnson is going to be like coming back from the Achilles injury. Will McDonald's been really good in year 2, but they have 0 at the position because Hassan Reddick will not be here, and he's been horrible this year. Michael Clemens is going to get cut because he's horrible, and they don't really have anything else. So I will go on the defensive line here with Pierce.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think Hassan Reddick has just been unbelievably disappointing. So let's add some pass rushing talent. Okay, so do you see what I see on the mock draft machine? The Lions went running back again.
Again, oh my God, back to back. I did not notice that. So back to back running backs. The Lions are just going to go completely buck wild in the post Ben Johnson era.
It's just unbelievable. I love these mock draft machines, man. So much great content. All right, so the top of the board here, really intriguing for the Giants. All of those top 4 players, top 5 players right there make sense for the Giants, which highlights 2 things. One, this is a draft where in the middle rounds, the Giants can definitely find starters like they did this past season. 2, oh my God, do the Giants have holes all over the place? So we're looking at round 3 and saying all 4 of those guys, 5 of those guys that are going to be at the top makes sense for the New York Giants. We have holes everywhere, but which one would I address in this spot? It's tough to say because I think that if you want to take the Ole Miss edge rusher, makes a lot of sense for you. Giants have question marks on the edge. I think they're going to be able to re-sign Azeez Ojulari for a very cheap deal. That's why they didn't trade him at the deadline. So sure, they have some decent depth there, but he's injured again, and you can't really rely on him. So you can make the case for taking Jared Ivey here, especially considering Kayvon Thibodeau, unbelievably inconsistent, also has dealt with injuries in the beginning of his career. So maybe you do want to double down at edge in the 3rd round. However, I would argue that the upside for a 3rd round edge rusher is probably not as high as the upside for a 3rd round guard. I think that guards oftentimes can step in and immediately start, even if you draft them in the 3rd round. And that's why I like Tyler Booker here. Now, I think you can make an argument for the Penn State safety, Kevin Winston, as well. Giants are definitely going to need more help at safety. They just found a legitimate starter in round 2 this past offseason with Tyler Nubin. But Jason Pinnock has been a ghost this year. I think he's also an impending free agent. Very good chance he walks. Plus, the Giants have a severe need at defensive interior, which is why I also think Dante Corleone, which is just awesome. We could bring descendant of the Godfather to the Giants here, would make a lot of sense. But I'm taking Tyler Booker. I think the Alabama guard, listen, you need some serious talent on the interior here. John Runyon Jr., he got banged up yesterday too. I like him a lot. Greg Van Roten has been nice as a spot starter this year, but I think long-term, we definitely need to find some talent at the guard position. So I like that pick.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot too. And Drew Allar being here for the Jets in the 3rd round, and Tony the GM is going to have his head spinning that I could have went this route. And that's what I in a perfect world, I would have liked to get Mason Graham in the 1st and maybe go quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd. Nonetheless, we pivot here on the program. That's what we have to do. For the Jets now, just looking at some of these options here, I think you can make a case to go a corner with Thomas from Florida State. They still need interior defensive line help. They need safety help as well. Billy Bowman Jr. out of Oklahoma. I'm going to go corner first because I think you're getting the better value with Thomas out of FSU, the 95th player at the 96th pick, rather than reaching, so to speak, at 102. And I think, there's going to be kind of an open competition with some guys who are here, Quantez Stiggers, Brandon Eccles, if the Jets decide to re-sign him for that corner 2 spot. Maybe Thomas gets in on the fold here. So I think this is where I'm going to go corner.
Yeah, and I'll say recent trends. Florida State defenders have been having a lot of success in the NFL in recent years, so we've seen a lot of them hit, and I like that pick. Good selection there. And cornerback, I made the argument for it in round 1, so I'm definitely open to round 3 cornerback for the Jets here. So I got to just mention this because Drew Allar, however it's pronounced, he's right there at 103 for the Giants. My bold prediction is he's going to be a top 10 pick. I think that he is going to fly up the draft boards between now and April. I think he's one of those guys who just has the tools and the traits where teams are going to say, yeah, he's raw and he's underdeveloped, but they're going to fall in love with the traits. I think Aller is going to be a top 10 pick. I just want to put that early December bold prediction for April's draft out there. I don't know who he's going to go to. I don't know if it's going to be the Jets or the Giants. It possibly could be. If Brian Dable's still here, I think he might fall in love with Drew Aller because he's got those similarities to Josh Allen. But I really do think that those similarities to Josh Allen, the way that he plays, and I think his lack of experience is going to be a help here because I think the teams are going to look at him as very moldable ball of clay. He's so coachable because he hasn't been coached enough. So I think Aller's going to be a top 10 pick. I just want to throw that out there as an early prediction. But now looking at the board here, I think that this is where we're going to have to go ahead and address. Let's take Carson Beck. No, I'm just kidding. Let's take, let's go safety. I'll take the Oklahoma safety, Billy Bowman Jr. I think that safety is a really underrated need for the Giants. Obviously, I'm still reeling over the fact that we lost Xavier McKinney. Still very upset about it. And I think Pinnock has just been so disappointing this year. So it's going to be something that the Giants need to address.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a position of need for both of these teams. Would not be surprised to see the Giants add another one, even though they did relatively early for safety in the second round this past year with Newman. Good player, but they could definitely use another safety. For me, I'm going to take a look at two different spots here. I think interior defensive line and safety. So pulling up the interior guys. I don't even know how you pronounce his last name. Pegues, JG Pegues, something like that. Out of Ole Miss jumps out to me. And at the safety spot, Rod Moore is interesting. I think there's some other. Yeah, I'll wait. I'll wait on safety. I like some of the guys lower on the board than I do on the interior defensive line spot. So I'll get the safety. Interior defensive lineman from Ole Miss.
There you go. I like it. Add some beefy talent to the interior for these teams.
Okay, back to the Jets at the top of round 5. Ewers, baby. No, just kidding. Now we can take a look at safety. A couple options that jump out. I like Arnold from USC. I know he's ranked a little bit lower here with 173 ADP, but with it being such a position of need, I'm a fan of his game. I'll take him.
There you go.
Back to the Giants.
Right. Back to the Giants. So we scroll down this draft board. Let me see who's available. I think this is the part where we do start drafting for need and seeing what positions. Looks like we're thin at cornerback and defensive interior. I'll say I think the Giants are addressing cornerback in free agency anyway. I think DJ Reed is not going to have much moving to do. I think he's just going to move lockers, not apartments. I think he's staying in New York, but putting on the blue helmet. So I think that if you scroll all the way back up, hold on, I think there might have been something that caught my eye.
Did I go too far? Keep going up.
Let me see. I just got to look around. This is the part of the draft where we get a little too deep, and some of these names are just,
Yeah, you want me to hide
names at this point. Yeah. Let's take the Michigan linebacker. Michigan linebackers are good, and they're often asked to do a whole lot. Plus, playing in Wink Martindale's system, if you're a good linebacker in that system, then you probably played real well because it's a very tough system to play in. And so let's go ahead and do it. Michigan linebacker, Barham. I like it.
Okay. Back to the Jets here at pick 162. All right. Did I take a tight end yet? I don't think I did.
Don't think so.
That's definitely a spot that I would like the Jets to take a look at. And my guy is still here. Luke Lakey. Iowa, something about Iowa tight ends, man. If you're going to take a swing in the 5th round on a tight end, why not go to tight end U out in Iowa? I'll take him even over Brenningstool. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. I also like Oscar Delp. I didn't know he would still be available at this point. I know he's a really late round pick, but he's somebody who I know had a lot of buzz last year.
And Mitchell Evans is still here too from Notre Dame. That's a little bit surprising.
Yeah. Tight ends down the board. I guess this is the time to take one. If Delp is still there, I'll plug him in for my next pick with the Giants. I think, like I said, I like Theo Johnson, but doesn't stop me from adding more talent at tight end, especially in the later rounds. So
no, it definitely doesn't. For me, I'm going to go to the offensive side of the ball for the Jets for a second. I think most of their offensive line is set for next year, but where they lack is depth. They had some mid-round swings with Max Mitchell and Carter Warren in the draft under Joe Douglas, and neither really have worked out. So I'm going to take Chase Lunt out of Connecticut and hope that he can develop into at least maybe a swing tackle or depth guy here.
I like it. I think in those late rounds, it's always great to just throw darts at the board on the trenches and
Yeah.
hope you hit on any of those defensive or offensive linemen.
Okay, one more pick for me. This is the Jets' last selection. Honestly, okay, I got two thoughts here, and both involve doubling up. So I want to get your take. Should I double up on interior defensive line with Cam Horsley out of Boston College or Jalen Catalon at safety out of UNLV?
I think I'll just fall back to what I just said. I think it's always good to throw darts at the board on the trenches in these late rounds. I feel anecdotally the hit rate on the trenches in the mid to late rounds is higher than on the secondary. I think a lot of those secondary guys end up on the practice squad and then usually waived by the end of year 2. Those defensive interior guys, because there's so many injuries on the interior, and oftentimes just being big and beefy will get you a spot on the field. Those guys will actually see the field and maybe potentially develop and make an impact. So I'd go trenches. I'd go defensive interior. Again, with injuries on the interior, sometimes just being a huge body gets you playing time. And that's why I'll go interior of the defense.
I like the way you think. I'm going to do the same thing and take Horsley out of Boston College. All right, so Giants have a 3 7th rounders. This is going to be a busy 7th round here for you.
Yeah, Giants have to trade a couple of those 7th rounders, I think. Got to try and move up in the draft or, trade them for veterans, whatever. Is my boy Delp still there? Oh, wait, no, he's not. There he is, 214.
Oh, 2 picks away. That's tough.
Sniped. Dude. All right, so I saw an Alabama safety was on the board. I will always bank on Alabama safeties. Alabama safeties are raw. They always succeed at the next level, I feel like. So I'll go ahead and take Malachi Moore.
I like Malachi Moore. I've done some mocks where he's gone a little bit higher than the 7th round.
We'll take that.
And it's what, a couple at the end here? Yeah, okay, 243 and 255.
Yeah, let's
What a great name, Tonka Hemingway.
Take him.
Interior defensive. How could you pass on Tonka Hemingway? That guy, if he isn't just a 350-pound space eater, I don't want it.
I want Tonka. Give me Tonka.
Right. Tonka, baby.
All right, Mr. Irrelevant. Let's go ahead and take the Oregon cornerback. Oregon is really good this year, number 1 ranked team in the country, and Giants need depth at corner, so let's go ahead and take them.
All right, let's see how we did here. Are you graded individually? I guess we will, right? All right, so the Giants, they hated your Trey Harris pick. I did not hate it really that much.
That's fine.
C+, bottom 11% of Giants drafts, they're saying.
Awesome. I love it.
I think you did fine. You got your quarterback. You got a wide receiver who I think is going to be good right away.
I think so too. I like it. Listen, I think this is a F pick right now on PFF's board. I think by the time we get to April, it's going to be a B+ at least. I think they're going to move higher on Cam Ward than they are right now. They're going to move higher on Trey Harris. They're going to move higher on a lot of these guys, I think. And listen, Giants in this mock draft added a lot of depth at safety, especially considering we double dipped there. We got a guard, we got a defensive interior. There's a lot of trenches and skill position players mixed in here. So I like it. I think it's a good mock. And again, I think you take the quarterback and you try and add as much talent around them as possible. Make this a quarterback friendly environment. And I think you do that by taking a wide receiver and a guard in those top 3 rounds. So screw it. I like it. Good draft.
Good job for my Jets. They gave Shedeur a C+. They loved the Pierce and Thomas pick and the JJ Plagues pick. Did not like the safety and tight end pick. And they loved how I closed it out with Cam Horsley. Overall, a B, top 59% of Jets drafts. I don't agree. I don't like how my draft fell. I felt like I was pushed into taking Shedeur Sanders because of how the board fell in front of me.
Yeah. I think Will Johnson there was a home run pick. I really do like the idea of doubling down at cornerback and just making a strength even stronger. And I think that this is a team maybe gets by with Tyrod next year or another veteran. I'm not sure, but I know that's not the route that Jets fans want to go after the Aaron Rodgers debacle. However, I think I like it. But overall, I think your ability to address needs in the middle rounds was really solid. So I like this draft, and you did beat me. You got a B, and I got to see something. So congrats.
There you go. See, there's going to be a lot of fun. I think, now is the time to go through and adjust. And there's going to be a lot of movement over the next few weeks here. Huge game in the Tank Bowl for the Jets this upcoming week. They have Jacksonville on Sunday. With Jacksonville's win this week, even though the Jets lost, they dropped from 6th to 7th. So that was some pretty big movement there. Would have a chance to go up the board with a loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, that would be also huge for the New York Giants, depending on how that shapes out. That game can have a major implication for the number 2, number 1 overall pick as well. Jaguars winning that game yesterday was huge for the Giants, moved us up the draft board. Very important. Giants have to keep losing. Jags have to keep winning. And, we'll see how it goes for the Jets. I think, obviously, we want to see them move up the board too and get a higher pick. But it's going to be very interesting to see if they even want to take a quarterback. I'm very curious.
Yeah, it's going to be, and it's a really cliche answer, so I apologize in advance for saying it, but it's going to be dependent on who they hire at GM and head coach. I think, there's if they hire Rex, they might run this whole thing back, and we'll be here in a year from now doing this all over again.
Oh God. I like Rex, but I don't like that. So hopefully not. I don't think Rex Ryan's going to get the job anyway. I don't think that's very serious. I will say though, I've said many times on the show that I think the Giants should remain patient with the head coach GM situation. Like, obviously, I think everybody knows I'm pro cleaning house and moving on, but I've said we should wait until the end of the year, see which candidates are available and who actually might be interested in coaching the Giants. I've changed my mind, and I've changed my mind for one major development in the coaching news. Bill Belichick and his ongoing talks with UNC.
Yeah.
The Giants want to convince him not to go to UNC. They're going to have to fire Brian Daboll ASAP and just give Bill Belichick the job. And again, I think everybody knows now I am a proponent of bringing Bill Belichick back just to restore order. Whether I think he's going to be a Super Bowl winning head coach with the New York Giants like he was with New England, I'm not entirely sure, but he will restore order, rebuild the culture, and rebuild the structure of the organization. And that's what I keep saying is the Giants need like a new CEO basically to step in and just redo the way that they do things. And I think Belichick is the only guy who can step in, stand up to John Mara and say, take a back seat. Let me just reshape everything in this building. So I just figured, coming off of the tail end of this mock draft, let's talk a little bit more grand picture here for the Giants. I think it's important to talk head coaching updates. I think Daboll is a dead man walking, unfortunately, because I do like him. But I think that there is an argument to getting this firing done sooner rather than later, especially if you're John Mara and you are interested in bringing Bill Belichick back to New York.
Yeah. We'll see. It's feels like it's heating up the sweepstakes for Bill Belichick going to UNC. But I would imagine he would choose going to the NFL over college football if he had the option, right?
I would think so, but I was doing a little bit more research on it last night, and sounds like he was really peeved by the search for a new job last year and how I read that he only finished in the top 3 for one team. It was the Falcons. The rest of the teams with head coaching openings didn't even consider him really. He told them all that he doesn't need front office control, which I know is a big concern for Giants fans. He forewent his desire for front office control and just said that he wants to be on the sidelines coaching. And pretty much all the teams said, no, thank you. So there is a belief among inside sources that Belichick is not completely interested in returning to the NFL and is upset with the owners and maybe wants to just go build in college instead. So that might be his preference. However, again, I keep falling back on it. The mutual love and respect between he and John Mara. I think there's a way to make it happen where he comes in and he tries to fix his franchise that he loves so much. So that would be our way of getting it done. But then again, I really can't tell what the Giants want with their future anymore. It's a little bit of a lost cause here.
It's going to be a fun few weeks as the future is determined for both the Jets and the Giants. That's going to do it for us on this episode today, a Mock Draft Monday. If you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Anthony's work over on Fireside Giants. You can find me at Matt O'Leary NY. That'll do it. We'll catch you next time.